Previously on Convicted.
So it was a difficult adjustment. My brother had a speech impediment. So not only was learning the English language difficult, but he stuttered.
When did I get diagnosed with clinical depression?
It says in 92.
In 92? Okay. Never happened.
And Richard is housed at North Branch Correctional Institution currently. He was at Western Correctional Institution previously.
This call is from
Richard Nicolas,
an inmate at a Maryland correctional facility.
Asia Nicolas, a 2-year-old little girl, was murdered in the summer of 1996, and her father was convicted. Since that time, Mr. Nicolas continues to maintain his innocence. I'm Brooke, and this is episode 3 of Convicted. Okay, so heads up. This episode is sad. It's not just sad, it's devastating. I'm going to talk about the death. I'm going to talk about the murder of a 2-year-old child. I promise it doesn't include any unnecessary details, but the details that are necessary are tragic all the same. We're going to take a short break to talk about our new sponsor. These days, you can get practically everything on demand, like this podcast. So why are you still going to the post office and dealing with their limited hours when you can get your postage on demand with Stamps.com? With Stamps.com, you can do anything you can do at the post office, right from your desk, like buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter or package using your own computer and printer. And unlike the post office, Stamps.com never closes. So you can get postage whenever you need it, 24/7. Because my podcast team and I live pretty far apart, when I want to send them things like documents, CDs, files, or other items that keep this show running, I use Stamps.com. It's so much faster than going all the way to the post office and waiting in line. I just weigh and print everything right from my desk. You can also benefit from this convenient post office alternative by, right now, using my podcast name, Convicted, for this special offer. It's a 4-week trial that includes postage and a digital scale. So don't wait. Go to Stamps.com before you do anything else. Click on the radio microphone at the top of the homepage and type in Convicted. That's Stamps.com. Enter Convicted. Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again. In the summer of 1996, Asia Nicolas was 2 years old. She was described as tall for her age, and in the pictures that I've seen of her, the ones before that night, she has black hair braided in pigtails and a smile on her face that forces your own mouth to smile back before you even consciously know what's happening. By all accounts, she was a little girl who was healthy, happy, and full of life. Asia's mother testified that she was a strange child, her words, and that she needed to kiss everyone, repeatedly, before she went anywhere. And an article in the Baltimore Sun said that whenever Asia would see a McDonald's, she would say the phrase, "Hey, pull in there." Weighing in at just under 11 pounds at birth, it seemed like she had entered the world larger than life. And she kept that status until the day that life was taken from her.
Asia had a very bubbly personality, and I thought she was a beautiful child. I'm a light-skinned black man, and Asia's mom is very dark-skinned, and Asia was kind of in between the both of us skin tone wise, and I thought that she was just a really, really pretty child. She had a a very bubbly, bouncing off the wall type personality. She was always smiling, happy to see people. You know, Asia had almost all of her mom's Trinidad accent.
Lisa was Asia's primary caregiver and the adult that made the important and frequently the responsible decisions for her daughter's well-being. But even though Asia was the product of a one-time union between her parents, she was loved and accepted by both sides of her family. Mary, Richard's sister, became a big part of her life. She told us in the previous episode that she'd taken Asia for weekend visits.
I kind of forced myself on them because I said, "Hi, I'm the aunt. I don't know you. I don't really care, but that little baby is my niece. So I'm gonna make my presence known because I want her to know that she has family." It was easier for me because I didn't have a relationship that was awkward.
Right.
I came over. I didn't care if I walked into a room full of swastikas and pitchforks. If my niece was in there, I was going to go in there. Period. And that's how I felt. To see a little extension of my brother touch me so much, I'm like, wow. Nothing was going to keep me from establishing a relationship. I took her to my aunt's house. She met the rest of the family,
Aunt Mary also accompanied her niece to at least 2 family get-togethers, where she was able to meet her relatives on her father's side of the family, including Aunt Gloria.
She came to my house, and her aunt, Mary, brought her. And she just wanted me to see her. And then she came to my sister's occasion we had out there. But then later on, her mother and Betty, Mary, but we didn't do that because her mother's name is Mary, so we called her Betty to separate the two of them. But Asia's mother and Betty went to Canada together.
Really?
Yeah.
Were they friendly?
At the time. Until this happened,
For the record, that was Hinda's voice asking if they were friendly. Though I was thinking the same question. I did fact check the story, and Mary, Asia, Lisa, and Mary's daughter did take a vacation together in Canada. In the last episode, we talked about a trip to the beach that was a week prior to the crime. Richard, wanting to spend more time with his daughter, made plans for he and Asia, along with Lisa, to attend the movies. However, Asia's mother became unable to attend.
I think that she was having a female problem. I didn't really ask a whole lot of detail because I didn't want to ask embarrassing questions, but I don't think she was feeling well. So, I said, well, how about if I take her out? She said, fine.
And so, it was decided. Richard and Asia would go to the movies, alone, together.
After I got off work from the photocopier company, all day long, I was like bragging to my coworkers and telling my customers and stuff up on the Army base that I was going to take my kid out to the movie theater, that we were going to go see the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and it's I was really looking forward to it. Friday night, I was actually supposed to drive the ambulance, but I was playing hooky so that I could take my kid out.
Both parents testified that Asia was sleeping when Richard arrived at the home, and that he was the one to wake her. Asia's mother testified that she'd taken Asia into the bathroom and asked her if she wanted her mother to come along because Lisa didn't trust Richard. But Asia forcefully stated that she wanted to go with her daddy. When I asked Richard about this incident, his memory was different. Her mom said that she took her into the bathroom and asked her if she really wanted to go. Do you remember that?
I don't think that ever happened.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just asking what you remember.
I don't think that happened. I didn't have any kind of problems dealing with Lisa, and it's Asia was happy to see me, and I scooped her up and ran out the door.
Asia's mother also testified that before she left, that Richard had instructed her to give her daughter a last kiss goodbye. Remember, Asia was a kissaholic, so it would be understandable for a last kiss to be mentioned, to make it to the movies on time. It felt to me like, at trial, it was being portrayed as a threat. Give her a last kiss. But it also could be interpreted another way. Asia, give her a last kiss so we can go to the movie. I proposed that idea to Richard, but apparently this was not the case. Her mom says that you said that Asia liked to kiss everybody, and so that you told her to give her a last kiss goodbye, which to me sounded like you were saying, okay, you've kissed her 10 times, give her one more kiss and let's go. Do you remember that at all?
No.
Okay.
Nah, didn't happen.
Okay.
Why would I keep her from kissing her mom?
No, it just sounded like that, she continued kissing, but...
No. No.
Okay.
Didn't happen like that.
Asia was then seated in the front seat of her father's car. She was wearing a red shirt and black tights when her father buckled her seatbelt, and she waved goodbye to her mommy. Then her and her father drove away together. I'm not a mother, but that didn't minimize the alarm blaring in my own head when Richard told me that the 2-year-old child, albeit big for her age, sat next to him in the front seat.
It's Asia. Asia was a big kid, so it's she seemed to fit fine to me. I didn't actually have a child safety seat, which sounds bad, but it's so I strapped her in up front with me, and that's just how we did it.
Asia's mother testified that because of a gesture that Richard made to her with his hands as they drove away, she became fearful, and she proceeded to write his license plate number on a wall inside her home. However, she did not testify that she attempted to stop or cancel the daddy-daughter date that was now in progress. When I asked Richard about the gesture, he said,
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what she's talking about. We're going to take a short break to talk about our sponsor. I was just talking to my friend Charlie from the podcast Insight about our upcoming conference in Indianapolis. I was struggling because my favorite shirt has gotten a hole, and I couldn't find another one anywhere, in any store, in my size. Charlie laughed and told me that she had tons of clothes picked out to go, but the baby growing inside of her belly had made them all too tight. We found a solution that helped both of us. Lay Tote. It's a fashion subscription box that sends brand name clothing and accessories right to your door for one low monthly fee. I was able to find a shirt I loved. Plus, it's perfect if you're expecting, because they have maternity totes. Because Charlie's clothing size is going to be changing for 9 months, she doesn't have to buy maternity clothes that she'll never wear again. The box was shipped right to my door, and it was filled with clothes that fit me and my style. To get your tote, go to laytote.com. That's LETOTE.com to get started for as low as $39 a month. If you enter promo code CONVICTED at checkout, you can get 50% off your first month. Once you sign up, you'll receive your completely customized tote within days. You can wear what you want, return everything in the mail when you're done, and repeat all month long. Again, that's laytote.com. Enter code CONVICTED. And feel fabulous with fashion delivered right to your door. I can't give you an objective timeline of what happened next, because the facts are to this day still disputed. But this is the story that I've pieced together from the mounds of evidence I've examined over and over and over again. Richard and Asia arrived at the theater in the Golden Ring Mall at around 6:45 p.m. and discovered that the movies had changed because it was Friday night. So instead of buying a ticket for a 7 p.m. showing of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, a ticket was purchased for the 8 p.m. showing of Pinocchio. I've only seen one ticket stub. Only one was collected into evidence. But what does that really mean? Well, it means that Richard purchased at least one movie ticket. Could he have purchased two and lost one? Sure. Could it have been that for nefarious reasons, Richard was the only one of the two present at the movie theater? I think that's less likely, but yeah, it's possible. However, Richard told me this.
When we got to the movie theater, I didn't have to pay for Asia's admission ticket because of her age. So it's Asia, got in for free.
Which makes sense because I've taken 2-year-olds to the movies and they got in for free. Asia and Richard took a picture at the photo booth at the mall. And although the picture is verifiable, there are two possible times that it could have been taken, 7:03 or 7:43. The company that manages the booth stated that the particular type of photo they chose was only printed at those two times. I've seen the picture, and to be completely honest, the happy, gorgeous child smiling in the picture haunts me. It's not because of her huge open-mouthed smile, or because she looks to be having the time of her life. I think what haunts me is that the picture is so vastly different than the one I saw taken of her later that evening at the crime scene. Richard told me that before the movie started, Asia had to use the bathroom, and he wasn't quite sure what to do, which makes total sense. I mean, he was a new father with a little girl not old enough to go into the ladies' room on her own. So, to the men's room they went.
We had gotten to the movie theater, and it was right before we were about to go in, and Asia started doing the, little kid dance, basically. And that's one thing that just never dawned on me, that where am I going to take her if she has to go to the bathroom, which is kind of stupid because all kids have to go to the bathroom. Anyway, my first instinct was to run into the men's room. So I scooped her up and ran into the men's room. Made sure that there was a clean stall for her to sit in, which there was, and sat her down so she could take care of her business and clean her up. Brought her out, and we bought a big soda and some popcorn, and we went inside to go see the movie.
The movie ended at 9:45 p.m., and at his original trial, Richard testified that they left the movie when it was over. Does that mean that they waited for the credits to end, or they hopped up and headed for the door as to beat the rush to the parking lot? In either case, both of their lives were about to change just minutes later.
The story that he explained to the police and explained to trial was that he got followed by a rogue road rage driver, and instead of driving his car to safety, he ends up driving his car down a desolate road, Bowley's Lane, pulls over to the left side of the car. Then he emerges from the car. The shooting occurs. The driver drives off. He goes on foot.
Is his statement of the case that his driver's door was open and the shooting occurred through the front door?
Through the passenger door with the window down.
Well, I thought she was shot on the left side of the face.
That's correct.
But she turned her head, certainly. I mean, isn't that what...
I guess that was the theory.
Richard didn't have a cell phone, and so he ran towards the illuminated Texaco station light to call for help. The 911 call was placed at 9:54 p.m., a call which I wish I could play for you, but as the audio was nowhere to be found in all of the boxes of evidence that I searched, I'm going to summarize the transcript for you instead. The call starts with the Texaco employee telling the dispatcher that police and ambulance are needed, and he tells her that a little girl has been shot. The dispatcher then asks more questions about the nature of the shooting, and the Texaco worker explains that he's calling for someone in his store. The phone is handed over to Richard. I have never wanted to hear anything more than what the voices sounded like on that call, except for maybe the sounds that were happening between the words. After being asked his name, Richard says, "A guy just shot my baby in my car." The dispatcher goes on to ask him more questions about the guy. I'm going to quote this part to you, but imagine it with Richard's particular way of speaking. Yes, and he was a white guy. A white guy. The dispatcher asks, what kind of shirt and pants did he have on? A question which, in the transcript, is followed by several spaces. Spaces that could represent accidental pressure on the space bar, or silence, or an upset father unable to get out the words that he needs. Either way, the dispatcher responds, "Okay, just calm down." The rest of the call is in a very similar form. The dispatcher asks about the shooter and about the car, and Richard responds with his particular patterns of speech, and the call ends with help on the way. I need to take a slight detour here. Literally. The timeline seemed so tight. It was hard for me to imagine all of this activity occurring so quickly. So I did what seems to be the gold standard for investigative podcasts. I did a test drive. Well, actually, I did a test ride. Rachel was driving. We used Rachel's GPS, and I entered the Texaco station as our final destination. Then I added a stop on Boley's Lane, at a place on the side of the road that I'd only previously seen in photographs. I have to admit, retracing those steps made me feel a different kind of connection to all of this, to the story. A different kind of connection than the many months of research I had done previously. We started at the former home of the Golden Ring Mall movie theater, which is no longer there, and I started the stopwatch app on my phone.
The movie got out at 9:45. He doesn't remember if he stayed for the credits or not.
I started the timer, and we sat in the parking lot for a little over a minute to account for the time it would take for him to exit the show.
So we're leaving at 5:37. Oh my gosh, it's 5:37?
That's 4 minutes fast.
It's 5:33. And there's quite a bit of traffic, but I have to imagine getting out of a movie on Friday night at a mall that was popular would take a few minutes to get out of the parking lot.
Yeah, I think this approximates that.
Then we turned onto the road and started the route that Richard and Asia took all those years ago.
It says we're 3.7 miles away. No, it's essentially a straight line.
Which I understand why he took this. Before I didn't understand why, because it looked like out of the way, but when I Googled it, this actually was the fastest route from Asia's house to the movie theater. Or the movie house, as he called it.
He called it the movie house? It's so old-fashioned. Movie house. I think sometimes he doesn't get the right words out.
Yeah.
So at some point, he says that a car started following him and driving erratically. So he turned off the main road, which is coming up, right?
What was was the first turn that he took onto Bowley's Lane, or was there an intermediate road that he turned onto from this one?
He turned onto an intermediate road.
Okay.
And passed 2 other roads before getting to Bowley's Lane, because I remember Sharon May say, well, why didn't you turn on this road? Why didn't you turn on this road?
So that means that probably he started getting followed on this road that we're on now, which is Pulaski Highway or Route 40. To avoid that, driver turned onto Moravia Park Drive, which is coming up in a mile and a half.
Right. Okay. About 4 minutes.
As we were getting close to the scene, I noticed I was feeling a little bit anxious and maybe even a little uneasy.
So this is where, almost, right?
Yep, I think that's probably around when the tailgating started.
Okay.
And he assumed, since it was Friday night and it was late, that probably somebody had been drinking.
Then I saw a name on a street sign that I recognized from having read over and over again in the transcript, Moravia Park Drive, and we were preparing to turn onto it.
Six minutes.
A little bit of traffic.
Okay, so he turns off onto Moravia Park Drive. He says that the guy is still following him, so he wants to turn off on a side street. And that side street is Bowley's Lane, but right now we are getting ready to pass.
What's that?
Schiller? Oh, and Proctorman, yep. I remember that name.
Okay.
I think that's...
There's a photograph of that street sign. We haven't passed any other side streets besides that one.
Okay. And is this Bowley's Lane?
There's a second one.
Okay.
And then...
Yeah, this is the 3rd street.
Okay, this is the 3rd street. And this is...
So he comes down here. The guy is still following him.
Having looked at the pictures of the scene, as sad and as emotionally horrifying as some of them were, they had never given me the sense of what I can only describe as realness that I experienced when we found the spot we were looking for.
We're at the spot. I would take at least a couple of minutes, like, get out of the car. He would get out of the car, walk behind the car. The other person would come up, shoot into the car, and then he takes off on foot to the Texaco.
After the time test was over, I did go back to the scene to look around, as not to throw off my timer. Rachel parked her car in the same position that Richard's had been on that night, and I got out and walked behind it, the way Richard said he had. The car was parked on the left side of the narrow road, the wrong side, so the driver's side of the car was next to trees and brush, and on the other side of those trees and brush was a cemetery. Imagining a desperate need for help, I looked around for my best option. I'm not good with directions, so I'm going to do my best to explain this in a way that we can both understand. So please, bear with me. I was standing next to the bumper of the car, facing the opposite direction of the trees and brush because obviously there was no help to be found in that direction. Big words like north and south confuse me, so I'm going to explain this in terms of left and right. My left side was closest to the car, so my left was towards the front of the vehicle, and my right side was pointing towards the direction from where we had driven to get to our current spot. When I looked directly to my left, I saw a turn up the road a bit, but no indication on what was past that curve. And still on my left side, but a little more to the right, I didn't see anything but highway, and to get to the highway, I would have had to jump a guardrail and climb a fence. To my direct right was the road from which we had just come, and it kind of formed a T intersection with a larger road. My view of what was on the right side of the T was blocked by brush. Plus, we had just come from that direction, so I knew that if we went back up that road, there were no indicators that I could get help. On the left side of the T, which is still to the right of my body, there were businesses. And though I was there during the day and didn't witness it, I know from the photos taken that night that there was a glowing Texaco sign and a McDonald's sign. If I needed emergency help at that moment, I would have ran towards those lights. I would have done what Richard did.
Okay, should we go to Texaco?
Yeah. So it takes 2 minutes to walk and about probably less than a minute for him to run.
Right. I mean, it probably is going to take us longer to drive than it would to walk because of...
Yeah, because we have to wait here for the traffic. He probably just booked it, plus his legs are a mile long.
Right.
Plus he had adrenaline pumping.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's right there. I mean,
yeah, I definitely would have picked...
Yeah, it's right in your path.
At this point, Rachel read my mind, and therefore I did not need to finish my sentence. But in case your telepathic abilities aren't quite as finely tuned, I was saying I would have definitely picked the Texaco over the McDonald's if I was looking for help.
I definitely would have picked...
Yeah, it's right in your path. It's visually in your path as soon as you turn. And it's immediately accessible from the road. You cannot even see anything behind this building.
This building is a large church.
Anything behind this building.
Right. I wouldn't... If that church was there at the time, I wouldn't think to go to the McDonald's behind it.
And even if the church wasn't there, the McDonald's is still would have been, was
right.
far back off the road, whereas this is right here.
Okay. So he runs in, makes the call. The guy makes the call, and we got 11 minutes. So if he left at 9:45, it would have been difficult for everything to have happened the way he said. But if he left before the credits, like if the movie got out, the credits finished at 9:45. So if he left when the movie was over, but before the credits ended, then...
When you say the movie ended, are you counting the credits?
Yeah, like...
Why would he ever stay for the credits with a
I don't
toddler
know.
At that hourly credit?
Well, right, no, exactly. I wouldn't have stayed for the credits. But it just, they always say that the movie got out at 9:45, and he consistently says, I stayed for the whole movie. And so I asked him, did you leave before the credits were over, and he didn't remember. I guess it is possible that all of this was done in that amount of time, but it's even more possible if he left when the credits were over, depending on how long the credits were.
Did you just say it was more possible if he left?
If he left before the credits,
yeah.
It's more possible that all of this happened in that amount of time.
And I think it's a fair assumption, because there's nothing to suggest one way or the other.
While this experiment lacked a lot of scientific value and answered my original question of, could all of these things happen in this amount of time with a firm maybe, it did help, as it dispelled any question that I or anyone might have had about why he chose the Texaco over the McDonald's. It was at the Texaco station that Officer Hannah picked up Richard and then returned to the place where Asia's unmoving body was still in the car. Officer Hannah takes responsibility in all of the versions of what happened next for ordering her removal from the car. However, at trial, Officer Hannah stated that both men worked together and simultaneously, without opening the door, they reached inside the car window and worked in tandem to remove Asia's body through the window. Richard told me,
it's when we got there, we had both stepped out of the patrol car. Officer Hannah looked inside the vehicle, saw her, and started zapping out.
zapping out, that means like freaking out?
Yeah, just freaking out, and I, wasn't doing that well myself, to be honest with you. He ran back to the back of my car, back to the trunk, and he started beating his fist on it, screaming at me to, pull her out of the car. So I had opened up the car door, reached in, pulled her out, laid her on the ground, and checked for a pulse, and did not get one. I had taken my shirt off, balled it up, and put it on her head. By that time, paramedics were also pulling onto the scene.
I don't know which man's account is more reliable, but the idea that two large men were able to have their upper bodies inside the window of a car when they could have just opened the door seems implausible to me. When you take into account that Officer Hanna was later both needled about breaking protocol from his fellow officers and praised by the prosecuting attorneys for the same action, this situation becomes that much more mysterious. Believe me, we'll cover that in detail later. I know from a timeline that I found in the detective notes that the little girl who was full of life just moments earlier was pronounced dead at 10:01 p.m. The timeline is somewhat confusing though, because from there it states that at 10:08 p.m., Mr. Nicholas's pager, wallet, and clothes were taken from him. However, later at 10:50 p.m., it says that Mr. Nicolas was taken to the station to be interviewed. If these notes are accurate, that means that Richard was running around the crime scene naked for 42 minutes, which my best judgment tells me is probably not the case. So I asked Richard to share with me his recollection of what happened.
After we got to the scene first. Paramedics got to the scene second. Then more officers showed up, and they were asking me what had happened. I was trying to tell them what happened as best as I possibly could. What I was concentrating on was trying to stay calm enough to speak to these people, so that I wasn't turning into a babbling idiot. That it's when I get upset, I can't speak. I just can't, and I have to calm myself down so that I can communicate. I can't think of any situation that I've ever dealt with that was more chaotic than that situation was, and I was freaking out. No doubt about it.
Do you remember how long you were at the scene, like observing what was happening before they took you to question you?
I was not paying attention to the time span exactly, no.
But you weren't running around naked for 42 minutes?
No. If I was going to guess, I'd say maybe 15 or 20 minutes talking to the police, trying to tell them what had happened.
Richard was taken to the station and interrogated by a series of detectives, including Gordon, Massey, and Brown. And he was later arrested for the murder of his daughter. While Richard was locked in a prison cell, awaiting his trial, a funeral for his baby girl was held, and her Aunt Mary was in attendance.
Did you go to her funeral?
Yes.
Was it, I just wondered if it might have been awkward, or was Lisa okay with that?
No, she, I don't know how she felt. She's never spoken to me since this whole incident. We haven't had any words, but I appreciate her graciousness for not being combative with us at the funeral, because regardless of who actually committed the crime, we were her focus of hatred, and she allowed us to spend those final moments to say goodbye to Asia. And whether she liked it or not, she allowed us to be there, and that I appreciate her being a woman. Her family, not so much. They weren't as pleasant, but during this whole ordeal, Lisa has always been very, how do you say, very well put together, very poised. I don't know that I could have been as kind, if you say that, because we are her direction of hatred. And I tell my brother, I know that we focus on your case, and we know that you're innocent, but Lisa walks past an empty bedroom every day, and nothing is going to fix that pain. Whether you have 25 more kids, nothing's going to fix that pain, and you have to always remember that. There's no winners in this story. When you come home an innocent man, I know you will, it's not going to bring Asia back. She's still gone too soon. So I've always refrained from saying anything negative about Lisa, because I don't walk past an empty bedroom. And I just thank her for just not exploding on us every chance she got, because I'm not sure that I couldn't. So she's always been very poised and very
That's really noble.
It's actually pretty damn spectacular, to be honest with me. At the funeral even, I just remember the whole scene was just was incredible. It was just it was like it wasn't even happening. I just remember my aunt and uncle guiding me through the church, and I went to see Asia, and I could not believe it happened. And then I turned around, and Lisa was standing there where the family receives people, and she had her hands on the rail. I remember I touched her hands, and I said, I just looked at her, and she moved her fingers, and I don't know.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Our next episode is going to be a panel episode with a familiar cast of characters answering your questions. But in order to do that, we're going to need your questions. So if you have a question that you're dying to hear answered, please email it to convictedpod@gmail.com or tweet it to @convictedpod. We're going to need you to do this by Wednesday so that, we have time to record the episode. So remember, email or tweet us your questions by Wednesday to hear them on the next episode, which is a panel episode. Richard Nicolas hasn't been home since that horrible day in July of '96. And he wouldn't have a trial until almost a year later, in 2 weeks, on Convicted. You can see pictures and other documents at convictedpod.com. Convicted is hosted and produced by me, with music and scoring by Blake Maples. You can see and hear his work at blakemaples.com. If you like what you hear, please give us a rating and review on your podcast app. And tell a friend so you have someone to talk about it with. Thank you so much for listening.
The last time I saw her, I was visiting her mother, and her mother had left to go to the store or something. And Asia and I were in the living room, and Asia was trying to walk, and she was walking around the coffee table, and she kept falling. I'm like, oh my God, don't hit the table with your face. So I was trying to keep her from, grabbing the table, and she was like, like, get off me, and she was laughing at me, pulling the table, and I just remember saying, she was like a little porcelain egg. I'm like, oh God, please don't fall. Please, Jesus, God, please don't fall. But I think that was the last time that I saw her. She was determined she was going to walk around that little table, and she was just a strong-willed little baby. And she did. She walked around that table. But that was the last time I think I actually touched her.